The Senate will convene as a court of impeachment.
Donald Trump becomes only the third U.S. president to face trial in the Senate. But with a Republican-controlled upper house, he's most likely to get off the charges of abuse of power and obstructing Congress. So what's really the point of this impeachment trial? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine Dennis. An historic trial of the US president has got underway in the Senate. Donald Trump is accused of abusing power by pressuring Ukraine to investigate his political rival and then trying to block the inquiry into the matter. The president's calling the whole affair a hoax. Senators spent the first day arguing over the rules of the trial. Trump's Republican Party blocked every attempt by the Democrats to present new evidence and witnesses. At the end of the trial, 2/3 of senators, that's around 67, need to approve at least one of the articles to remove the president from office. But it seems unlikely as the Republicans hold a majority. Here's how the two sides are preparing for battle.
He wanted to coerce Ukraine into these sham investigations of his opponent that he was terrified would beat him in the next election. That's what this is about. You want to say that's okay? Their brief says that's okay. The president has a right to do it. On Article 2, we heard the president, he can do whatever he wants. You want to say that's okay? Then you got to say that every future president can come into office and they can do the same thing. Are we prepared to say that? Well, that's why we're here.
They're not here to steal one election. They're here to steal two elections. It's buried in the small print of their ridiculous articles of impeachment. They want to remove the President Trump from the ballot. They won't tell you that. They don't have the guts to say it directly, but that's exactly what they're here to do.
All right, let's introduce our panel now. In Washington, D.C., we have Michael Isikof. He's Chief Investigative Correspondent at Yahoo News. And interestingly, he's one of the reporters who helped break the Monica Lewinsky story in the 1990s. In Palm Beach, in Florida, we have Robert Bennett, who served as a personal attorney for President Bill Clinton during the Paula Jones case. Also in Washington, D.C., we have Paris Dennard. He's a Republican strategist and member of the advisory board of Donald J. Trump for President. Well, welcome to you all. Paris, let me start with you as a lifelong Republican. You tweeted that this entire impeachment is a joke. This isn't about national security. It's all politics.
Well, that's absolutely right. And I think the American people can see that. This entire process is not about the Constitution. It's not about justice. It's not about national security. It's about the Democrats in Congress trying to subvert the will of the American people by them obstructing the will of the people through the election process and trying to get Donald Trump out of office through this impeachment process. If it was so severe, if the case was so strong against him, they would have had more articles of impeachment, stronger articles of impeachment, and Speaker Pelosi would have put them to the Senate quicker. But they didn't. She held it for political reasons. And now, in the impeachment trial, you have Adam Schiff have the nerve to talk about transparency and fairness and asking for witnesses when all of those things were denied in the House side of this matter. So it's all about politics. The American people know it.
Right. And Robert, coming to you. So Paris is articulating some rather familiar Republican narratives with regard to this trial. What do you think? Do you think that perhaps the Democrats are using this for electoral gain? Of course, we have to remember there is an election later this year.
Well, I'm sure that, that there's some of that, but I think it's a very extreme view to say this is all politics. The articles of impeachment certainly set out a troubling story of what Mr. Trump did, and the House of Representatives determined that that was so serious it warranted impeaching him. I respect those who have the view that politics played a big part, but it's just too extreme to just say it was just politics.
All right, coming to you, Michael, in Washington. What do you think in terms of this being a huge moment for the people of the United States? This is only the third time, of course, that an impeachment trial has got underway. What does it mean for the people of America?
Well, a lot will depend on the outcome and also how the trial is ultimately perceived. There doesn't seem to be much doubt about the ultimate outcome. It seems highly unlikely that 20 Republican senators are going to jump ship and vote to convict Donald Trump. But don't underestimate how significant this trial can be if it is not deemed to be credible, if it's not deemed to, if it's perceived as a cover-up, then that's going to be very damaging for the president. You do have a large segment of the American public that don't view it the way the president's political supporters do, who do find the conduct, some of the conduct, quite troubling. And you have Republican senators such as Mitt Romney who have indicated as much. So I think we're going to have some very crucial votes next week on whether to call witnesses. And I think how that plays out. And none of us know at this point whether 4 Republicans will vote to call witnesses. It looks like at least 3 are already there. So the Democrats are 1 short from getting the magic number of 4 that could take this trial in a whole other direction with key witnesses such as John Bolton and Mick Mulvaney being forced to testify.
Right, coming to you, Paris. Mitch McConnell has proudly declared that he, as leader of the Senate, majority leader of the Senate, is working in close coordination with the White House. How on earth can that, therefore, yield an independent, fair inquiry into the behaviour of the president, given that all of the senators have taken an oath to be impartial? They're supposed to be impartial jurors, but their minds have already been made up.
Look, I think the issue of impartiality when it comes to the political process in this is overblown. You have at least 2 or 3 sitting senators that are actually running for president against Donald J. Trump. And so no one is talking about their alleged impartiality about this. And Senator Mitch McConnell is not leading this impeachment trial. There are House managers who are, and many of which already, before the president even became the president, the very beginning talked about trying to impeach him. So their impartiality is also up for question. This, at the end of the day, is reflective of how the American people feel about the alleged charges against the president. It's funny to me that they are claiming this case is so strong when the president put out the entire transcript with the president of the Ukraine saying that he was not coerced,
forgive me,
it
wasn't exactly a transcript, was it? It was a version of what was said. It wasn't exactly a transcript, but please continue.
Well, I mean, you can go tit for tat, but at the end of the day, the American people are responding positively to the president. He's having an upcoming rally in New Jersey, an unprecedented 100,000 people have signed up to attend his rally. During this whole impeachment process, the president has signed historic and made historic trade deals with China, with the United States, Canada, and Mexico, as well as important legislations here that he signed in this country. And so the Democrats know that this is not something that is that worthy of impeachment. And someone mentioned Senator Mitt Romney and these 4 Republicans that are on the fence. They're not going to vote for impeachment. The Republicans are not going to. This is not a bipartisan, overwhelming support of something that renders itself to be a high crime or misdemeanor, which is totally opposite of what happened with President Bill Clinton. That was a high crime. he was impeached for it, and he even lost his license for it and had to pay a fine for a period of time for that, for perjury.
All right. Robert, coming to you. Now, you've actually represented, as a lawyer, you've represented a sitting president. What's your assessment of the charges that have been brought to the Senate, and whether or not they are approved or whether the president is acquitted? What's your assessment of what it means, the significance of these charges having been brought in the first place?
Well, I think it's very significant that the charges were brought. These are serious charges. Excuse me. I think it will be very difficult to convict him in the Senate because votes are going along party lines. And, you know, most of the American people, if the polls are believed, believe that some action should be taken against the president. You know, you'll have to wait and see what all the evidence is and how the vote actually goes down. But I think it is most unlikely that that he will be convicted of the charges because the Republican Senate is going to stick together and vote no and vote to acquit. But you never know. Once these things start, you never really know how they will turn out.
Right, and Michael, remind us then of the last impeachment, 1999, President Clinton. How damaged was he after that?
You know, he survived it. He was able to continue his presidency and had high public approval ratings. So in that sense, he fared quite well, given that he was the second president in the history of the country to be impeached. But it did cast a cloud over his legacy. There's no question about it. I was kind of struck when Speaker Pelosi on Sunday kept making the point that Donald Trump has been impeached for life and that would be a black mark that would forever hang over him. Well, Bill Clinton was impeached for life as well. But you know, he continued to speak at Democratic conventions to thunderous applause and continued his life. So it's hard to know how much this impeachment will hang over Donald Trump in the future. A lot is going to depend, as I said before, on how the trial is perceived. And if it is viewed, and the Democrats are really trying to make this point over and over again, that if there's no witnesses and no documents, that it will be a cover-up. And if that point breaks through, then you know, the president will be damaged.
So, Paris, coming to you then, it all rests really, doesn't it, on the way the Republicans handle this matter of allowing witnesses, for instance, more evidence to give the impression of a free and fair trial, because the perception of this being a fair exercise of the impeachment clause in the Constitution is essential for Donald Trump if he's going to go on and win another election later this year.
Give me a break. This is not about the fairness of the Republican Party. We didn't bring these charges. This is about the prosecution. This is how it works in the American system.
Yeah, but the Republicans are blocking
on the prosecution.
Forgive me.
And in the House of Representatives, and forgive me, in the House of Representatives, I didn't hear people claiming and screaming and hollering and crying about impartiality, fairness, when Adam Schiff was holding meetings, closed meetings, when he was not subpoenaing witnesses and not doing. He could have had witnesses. He could have subpoenaed people, and all of these things that he did not do. It was not a fair process to President Trump. And when you look at to your previous question about the impact of this, the impact will be on the party who brought the charges. Going back to President Clinton, he had very high approval ratings, had a very successful presidency, but also the Republicans suffered in the next election. The Democrats' overreach is going to hurt them. and it's going to hurt them in this election as well. The president's approval and support amongst the base and the Democrats' inability to shift the country in more support of impeachment. Look, even in the House, 2 Democrats at least voted against their own party to bring these articles of impeachment.
Right.
It's not as cut and dry as these people are making it out to be.
All
this
right.
is purely politics, and the articles of impeachment are so razor thin and so flimsy, it's a joke.
Robert, coming to you, Paris suggests that the Democrats might have actually been mistaken in choosing the articles of impeachment. He says they're flimsy and insubstantial. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. I do think that they are not as strong as you would like in an impeachment proceeding. But let me say this: you should not bring an impeachment. You shouldn't impeach a president unless you have, in my judgment, the support of both parties and support generally of the American people. You're seeing now how difficult it is. Every issue is being fought. And so usually you have to have the general support anyway of most of the American people and both political parties. Now, I do think you put your finger on something. If the Republicans are perceived as obstructing justice here and are perceived as opposing every move the managers of the impeachment try to make, this will be very harmful to the president. Whereas if they just let things alone a little bit, I think just the numbers alone will cause there to be an acquittal on the charges. But if the Republicans keep fighting the way they're fighting and the issues that they're fighting, I think it could boomerang on the Republicans and take away seriously from an acquittal.
Right. And Michael, one of the biggest contrasts, if you like, between the Clinton impeachment process and this was the bipartisan nature. I mean, Robert just alluded to it, the bipartisan nature of the Senate and the agreement on the rules and the procedure as to how to complete the process. And that is so clearly lacking in this particular case. Is this an indication of how polarized US politics is at the moment?
Absolutely. It's sort of, we're reached a point where it's almost impossible to get bipartisanship on anything, especially as it relates to the president. But I just want to make a couple of quick points. I do think the Republicans have one valid point here, which is that the House could have pushed further to subpoena the witnesses that the Democrats now say are essential for this trial. They did subpoena Charles Kupperman, the deputy to John Bolton, who actually had the same lawyer as John Bolton. And that case was proceeding. Judge Richard Leone in Washington, D.C. set a schedule for briefs. And I think that the Democrats flinched. They were worried that Leone might rule against them, and they pulled the subpoena for Kupperman. They withdrew it. And that made the entire case moot. I think they did so for tactical reasons, because if Leone had ruled against them, then that would have undercut the second article of impeachment they were planning, obstruction of Congress. Because if you had one judge who ruled against the Democratic position, it would have been a lot harder to bring that case. So I think I understand tactically why they did it, but strategically in the long run, that may come back to haunt them. One other point about Bolton's testimony, and I do think Bolton is the key witness here. Nobody has any idea what he's going to say. I'd like to get Bob's reflections on this. There's an old standard for trial lawyers. You never ask a question of a witness when you don't know what the answer is going to be. This is that in spades, if they ever get Bolton to testify, he could blow up in the Democrats' face, or he could completely confirm their case, or it could be something in the middle. It's a complete wild card, and that's why there's a lot of drama to this trial, even if we believe we ultimately know the outcome.
All right, and Paris, we do believe that we know the ultimate outcome, don't we? We expect President Trump to be acquitted. So what would you say is actually on trial at this particular moment? Who exactly stands to win, and who could possibly lose from this process?
You know, at the end of the day, this entire charade is about politics. And the people who lose are the American people, because rather than having the Congress work in a bipartisan nature to get things done, like reducing the cost of prescription drugs and infrastructure and other important issues that are important to this country, they're focused on this partisan attempt at getting the president out of office. And so we know what the end result's going to be. But we knew it from the very beginning, because you've had multiple members of Congress that are sitting there as House managers, have talked about repeatedly that their number one goal, and they were going to continue to try to find ways to impeach President Trump. And even Congresswoman Maxine Waters said she's going to continue to dig up dirt and try to find more things to impeach him on, because they are just so upset at the fact that he not only won, but that he's doing so many good things for the American people that they don't want to give him credit for. So at the end of the day, we're all losers because of this process that the Democrats are doing.
And Robert, if Paris is right and the American people are viewing what appears to be a kind of broken politics, what's the state of the Constitution at the end of all this? If indeed it's been a wrong move on the part of the Democrats, and people suggesting that this is being used as a political ploy in order to gain electoral advantage. I mean, what's the state of that after all of this?
Well, I think the Constitution will take a hit if that is the case. But the Constitution has survived for a very long time, and it will survive this. And I think that even if President Trump is acquitted by the Senate, which I think is more likely, much more likely than not, will just go on. And I don't think the Constitution will be blamed. And that's why it's, I think, very important for President Trump and his followers to allow the process to go forward and not be blamed for the engineering an acquittal by not allowing witnesses to appear or documents to be produced.
All right, we're running out of time, so I'd like to move and give the final word to Michael, because we haven't spoken about the four Democratic presidential hopefuls, or at least the nominees in waiting, if you like, who are locked in this Senate process, not being able to compete out on the hustings with their other rivals for the candidature. What about Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and the other two? What sort of impact is this going to have on their campaigns?
Well, it's clearly going to hurt them, because they can't be in Iowa and New Hampshire at a crucial period when the caucus and the primary is scheduled. So in that sense, one could argue that former Vice President Biden is the winner here, although it is also possible that he could end up as a witness if the Republicans, if the Democrats get to subpoena Bolton, it's pretty clear that the Republicans will come back and will at least subpoena Hunter Biden and possibly former Vice President Biden as well. So I'm not sure he's entirely clear. Clearly, the Republican response is going to try to show that the president had legitimate grounds to make that extraordinary request of President Zelensky to investigate Biden. They're going to try to show he had that there was ample reason for that, and if they do and it breaks through, that's not going to be helpful to the vice president's campaign.
Right, thank you all very much indeed. We could talk forever, couldn't we? Thank you so much, Michael Isikof, Robert Bennett and Paris Denard. Thank you all very much indeed. And as ever, thank you for watching the programme. You can see it again anytime you like by going to the website, aljazeera.com. Should you want more discussion, there's our Facebook page, facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter at AJ Inside Story, and I'm at Martine Dennis. So from me and the whole team here in Doha, it's bye for now.